Imagine 10 absolute strangers from 5 different continents checking into a quiet Venetian hotel.
Just completely random people, at least on paper.
Right, exactly. But then, 3 days later, they leave their luggage completely untouched, they lock their passports in their room safes, and they simply evaporate into the autumn fog.
It's wild. It really defies the laws of probability.
It really does. So today, for our deep dive, we are opening up a dossier titled Shadows of the Lagoon, the Venice 10 Conspiracy.
Yeah, and the claims laid out in this dossier are just staggering.
They really are. We're going to be analyzing the bizarre, highly coordinated disappearance of these individuals, and also, the unprecedented, hyper-militarized global response that followed.
Which is a whole other crazy aspect of this. We are dealing with a scenario where the actual physical environment of the city itself seems to play like a crucial role in how this operation was even executed.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the setting, because the dossier describes Venice with this incredible, almost oppressive detail. It calls the Venetian lagoon suspended in a state of resplendent decay.
That's quite a phrase.
Right. I mean, if you picture an autumn night in Venice, you have this cold, wet fog rolling in straight off the Adriatic Sea. You're wandering through these claustrophobic, maze-like alleys.
Oh, I can picture it perfectly.
And the shop windows are totally dark, except for these leering Carnevale masks staring out at the few tourists brave enough to wander the labyrinth. It sets a stage where you can almost believe people could just slip into the shadows and cease to exist.
Well, and the physical geography of Venice is basically a closed system.
Exactly.
You're on an island city with no cars. You are entirely dependent on water channels and these narrow little footbridges. So vanishing from a place like that completely undetected, that requires an astonishing level of logistical mastery.
Right. Which brings us to the inciting incident and, well, the people at the center of this dossier. Because into this foggy labyrinth arrive 10 travelers.
The Venice 10.
Exactly. And they check into this gothic boutique hotel tucked away in the Cannaregio district near the Sacca della Misericordia. And their passports show they arrived entirely separately.
Yeah, with stamps from all over the place.
Right, London, Paris, Kathmandu, Singapore, and New Delhi. Legally and logistically, these 10 people are absolute strangers to each other.
And the dossier emphasizes that very point, right? Because they want to highlight the anomaly of their behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. When you were traveling alone and you encounter other solo travelers in a dimly lit hotel lobby, maybe you offer a polite nod.
Sure, maybe a little small talk.
Exactly. But the text notes that the moment they gathered, this eerie, instinctual gravity pulled them together.
Wow.
Yeah, they immediately fell into this pre-existing rhythm, like they already knew each other.
And to really understand the gravity of that rhythm, you have to look at the incredibly specific cast of characters we're dealing with here.
Well, definitely.
We have Jeff. He's a British businessman noted for having cold, calculated eyes. And he instantly pairs up with Jenny, this brilliant French biochemist.
Right, an odd pairing on the surface.
Totally. And then you have Mark, a meticulous German auditor, exchanging these knowing glances with Michael, an enigmatic American venture capitalist.
And the demographic spread is equally deliberate across the rest of the group.
Yeah, tell them about the Indian contingent.
Right, so the dossier highlights this Indian contingent, Arvind, a brilliant toxicologist, Komal, a database architect, and Sonu, an imposing former security chief.
Which is quite the trio.
It is, and this trio immediately bonds with Ahmed, who is a really sharp corporate attorney from Singapore.
And rounding out the 10, you have Sabita, a Nepalese clinical nurse. She spends her evenings walking the stone bridges in quiet, intense conversation with Shah, a logistics coordinator from Pakistan.
Now, this is where the dossier gets really interesting with its phrasing.
Yeah, and actually, I have to put back a little on the dossier's framing here, because the text calls this connection unnatural, which implies something almost supernatural or deeply sinister.
I see where you're going with this.
Right, because if you put 10 highly educated international professionals in a boutique hotel, isn't it entirely possible they just, I don't know, bonded over shared cosmopolitan experiences? Why does the dossier insist this isn't just a coincidence?
Well, it insists on the word unnatural because of the strictly tactical nature of their interactions.
Tactical.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't just share drinks and swap travel stories. They immediately divided into those specific pairs and embarked on a shared, highly unusual mission.
Okay, that makes sense.
Right, because they completely ignored the standard tourist itinerary. There were no art galleries, no grand piazzas.
No gondola rides.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Instead, they actively sought out and explored the ancient city's most geographically isolated, cursed, and haunted corners. They were treating the dark geography of Venice like a map for an operation.
And that operation becomes terrifyingly clear when you look at the dossier's timeline of their vanishings. The text actually refers to it as the timeline of the fog.
That's a great name for it.
It is, but we need to analyze this not just as a chronological list, but by the tactical significance of how they disappeared. Because they didn't just vanish all at once in some grand spectacle.
No, they don't.
They disappeared in precise pairs, separated by massive gaps in days, but incredibly tight windows of minutes.
And that temporal proximity within the pairs is the key signature of a coordinated extraction.
Let me walk you through it. It starts on October 12th. Sabata, the nurse, she vanishes at the Cannaregio on the Grand Canal at 14:30.
Okay.
Just 15 minutes later, Shaw, the logistics coordinator, disappears miles away at Campiello Barbaro.
So a 15-minute gap.
Right. Then, on October 14th, Jenny, the biochemist, vanishes at 11:15 at the Casan degli Spiriti. And again, exactly 15 minutes later, Jeff, the businessman, is gone from the Sacca della Misericordia.
If you look closely at those locations, it's very telling. Like the Casan degli Spiriti, it's notorious for being isolated, sitting on a lonely promontory facing the northern lagoon.
It's practically out in the water.
Exactly. Vanishing from a crowded tourist trap is one thing, right? You can just get lost in the crowd. But vanishing from an isolated maritime choke point, that implies a waterborne extraction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, you essentially have 15 minutes to ensure two separate people in two separate locations are successfully pulled off the board without a single witness.
That is wild. And the timeline just stretches the tension even further. On October 16th, Sonu, the former security chief, disappears at Riva de Biasio. 35 minutes later, Ahmed, the attorney, vanishes near the Rialto Bridge.
A slightly larger window, but still incredibly tight.
Right. And then we reach the most baffling part of the timeline on October 19th. Arvind, the toxicologist, vanishes during a private boat transit to Pavia at 16:00.
Oh, the Pavia disappearances.
Yeah. 15 minutes later, Komal, the database architect, disappears inside the abandoned psychiatric ward on Pavia itself.
I mean, Pavia represents the peak of this mechanical impossibility. For anyone who doesn't know, it is a quarantined, completely abandoned island.
Public access is strictly forbidden.
Exactly. For two individuals to secure private transport out there and then entirely vanish from a contained landmass surrounded by water, it's absurd.
How do you even do that?
It absolutely requires an extraction vehicle waiting just offshore, completely bypassing local maritime radar.
It's straight out of a spy thriller. And the final pair really seals the pattern. October 21st, Mark, the auditor, vanishes at Campio del Romare at 22:3. 30 minutes later, Michael, the VC, disappears at Palazzo Mastelli.
The precision is just terrifying.
The sheer precision of this 15 to 35-minute window across the board is staggering. But this brings me to a massive contradiction in the dossier's narrative.
I think I know what you're going to say. The passports?
The passports. And the luggage. So the hotel staff eventually realizes these rooms have been empty for days. They enter, and they find the luggage completely untouched. Clothes still folded.
Everything just left behind.
Exactly. And the passports are left sitting silently in the room safes. Now, the dossier suggests a highly orchestrated, voluntary vanishing act.
Right.
But if you look at the evidence abandoning your only form of international identification, that screams kidnapping to me. I mean, when someone orchestrates their own disappearance, they take their money and their ID.
You would think so, yeah.
If a hostile snatch squad grabs you, they don't care about your passport, they just want the body. So how does this make sense?
Well, a kidnapping theory seems totally logical until you factor in the constraints of Venice itself.
What do you mean?
A hostile snatch squad operating in a pedestrian-only city would inevitably leave signs of a struggle. I mean, carrying 10 unwilling bodies across the labyrinth of footbridges, loading them onto boats over a span of 9 days without triggering a single CCTV camera or witness alert.
Oh, I see. That's practically impossible.
Exactly. The untouched luggage and secured passports point to a different mechanism entirely. It points to voluntary extraction via a shadow infrastructure.
Meaning they didn't actually need their original identities anymore.
Precisely. If you are willingly leaving your passport in a safe, you're signaling that you do not intend to cross a border through traditional documented means.
Because they had another way out.
Right. Out on the Adriatic Sea, beyond the lagoon, international waters offer a completely different set of rules for maritime smuggling. They were stepping into new documentation and a new life that was already waiting for them offshore.
Man, leaving those passports behind implies a terrifying level of pre-existing resources.
Absolutely.
And the authorities clearly realized this too, because the response didn't look like a standard missing person search. Honestly, it looked like a declaration of war.
It really did escalate quickly.
Very quickly. By day 6 of the silence, the hotel staff alerts the Carabinieri. Families across 2 continents are panicking. Embassies in Rome start pounding on desks demanding answers.
Yeah, the pressure was immense.
And then the Italian Ministry of the Interior does something drastic. They bypass the typical missing persons protocol entirely and classify this as a top-tier national security emergency.
And that classification is the major turning point in the dossier. It alters the entire jurisdictional landscape overnight.
How so?
Well, when 10 high-net-worth, highly specialized individuals vanish like that, governments stop worrying about public relations and they start worrying about espionage.
Which explains the legal maneuvers. The dossier highlights the formation of a transnational joint investigation team coordinated by an agency called Eurojust.
Right.
For you listening, Eurojust is the European Union's agency for criminal justice cooperation. But the dossier cites a very specific legal mechanism, the Council Framework Decision 2002-465-JHA.
It's a mouthful.
It really is.
Yep.
Walk us through the mechanics of this. Why is invoking this specific alphanumeric law such a monumental escalation?
So normally international law operates like a series of locked doors, right? If an investigator in Italy needs to access the server logs of a venture capitalist in America, or the encrypted files of a German auditor, they have to use mutual legal assistance treaties.
Which takes forever.
Forever. It means filing paperwork, waiting for a foreign judge's approval, and just dealing with months of bureaucratic friction.
You're basically asking politely for the keys to each door, one by one.
Exactly.
Right.
But the Council Framework Decision 2002-465-JHA acts as a bureaucratic skeleton key. It is designed to kick down those doors instantly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it allows for the creation of a joint investigation team where law enforcement from multiple countries can share raw, real-time intelligence without waiting for a judge's stamp.
That's huge.
It is. An investigator in Venice can pick up a secure line and directly access data from a server in Singapore that very same afternoon. You do not hand over that kind of sweeping, unchecked transnational power because some tourists miss their flight.
No, you invoke this framework when you believe you are dealing with a monumental threat. And that legal skeleton key translated into a physical ground game in Venice that was terrifyingly intense. The dossier details a multi-agency crackdown that effectively put the city under siege.
It is a full lockdown.
Yeah, you have the Polizia di Stato, the state police, erecting aquatic checkpoints. They are physically stopping and searching every single vaporetto and private water taxi in the lagoon.
And for anyone who has navigated Venice, you know the Vaporetto is the public water bus. It is the absolute lifeblood of the city's infrastructure.
You really can't get around without it.
Right. So shutting down or searching every Vaporetto is the equivalent of halting the entire New York City subway system. It brings commerce and civilian movement to a grinding halt.
And while the transit system is totally paralyzed, the Arma dei Carabinieri deploys 2 elite units simultaneously.
Yeah, they did not go back.
Not at all. The dossier notes that the Scientific Investigation Department, known as the RAE-CIS, systematically swept the hotel rooms. But they aren't looking for fingerprints.
Yeah, they're looking for much more than that.
Right. They are looking for microscopic traces of biological, chemical, or digital evidence left behind by our French biochemist and Indian toxicologist.
And parallel to that physical sweep, the Special Operations Group, the ROS, is just tearing through the digital world.
It's their focus.
Well, the ROS handles organized crime and terrorism, so their focus would be squarely on the complex financial architecture managed by the German auditor and the American venture capitalist.
Trying to follow the money.
Exactly, trying to follow the money that funded this massive shadow extraction.
And if paralyzing the transit system and deploying elite anti-terror units wasn't enough, the actual military gets involved.
This is the part that really shocks me.
Yeah. The heavily armed Legionary Regiment Serenissima is deployed onto the water. These are elite amphibious assault troops actively boarding civilian and commercial vessels in the lagoon.
It's an incredible escalation.
It is. The disparity between who these missing people claim to be and the overwhelming military force mobilized to find them is the central tension of this entire event. I mean, you do not send amphibious assault troops to look for a Nepalese clinical nurse and a Pakistani logistics coordinator.
No, you don't. Unless, of course, the Italian government realized that the nurse and the logistics coordinator were merely covers for something much more formidable.
Which they obviously did.
Right. The sheer scale of the militarized response basically confirms that the authorities believe they had just hosted a hostile, highly sophisticated infiltration right under their noses.
It really is a masterful, chilling orchestration of misdirection and disappearance.
Absolutely.
I mean, let's just recap for a second. You have 10 strangers from 5 continents. They arrive separately in a decaying, fog-drenched island city. They meet, instantly lock into a pre-existing rhythm, and embark on a dark tour of isolated maritime choke points.
Like clockwork.
Yes. Then, with terrifying temporal precision, they vanish into thin air, leaving their legal identities locked in a safe. And the aftermath triggers a massive transnational manhunt, rewrites international jurisdictional laws overnight, and brings elite military forces down on a civilian population.
And the logistics involved in successfully evading that level of scrutiny on an island. It's practically supernatural. It requires a level of planning that really borders on the impossible.
It leaves you breathless just trying to map out the mechanics of it in your head. But as we wrap up this analysis of the dossier, there's one final, incredibly specific thread that the text leaves us with.
Yeah, this is the really thought-provoking part.
We've spent this entire time dissecting the how and the where of their disappearance, but I want you to look back at the who.
Right, look at the professions.
Look closely at the specific jobs of the Venice 10. We have a biochemist, a toxicologist, a database architect,
Yep.
a clinical nurse, a former security chief, a logistics coordinator.
The support staff, essentially.
Exactly. And then an auditor, a corporate attorney, a venture capitalist, and a businessman.
So think about what it takes to build an organization from the ground up.
Okay.
If you strip away the Carnevale masks and the fog and the ghost stories of the Venetian Lagoon, what are you actually looking at?
Right.
That is not a random assortment of high-end tourists. That exact list of professions comprises the complete structural chart of a fully self-sustaining, highly funded, covert research operation.
Oh my God. You have the hard science in the biochemist and the toxicologist.
Exactly.
You have the data infrastructure. You have the medical support in the nurse.
And you have the physical security, the supply chain logistics, the financial auditing to hide the money, the legal cover from the attorney, and of course, the infinite funding from the venture capitalist.
When you lay the pieces out on the table like that, it fundamentally changes the entire nature of the dossier.
It really does.
These 10 individuals didn't go to Venice to escape their old lives. They went to Venice to assemble.
Yes. The military wasn't looking for missing victims. They were hunting an activated cell.
And the lingering question you are left with isn't just where they went when they slipped into the Adriatic fog.
Well,
The terrifying question is, with all of that money, science, and security, what exactly were they building in the shadows of the lagoon?
yeah. Once you realize they were a fully functional organization, the silence they left behind becomes, well, the most deafening part of the story.
It truly does. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Venice 10 conspiracy. We love tearing apart these complex narratives and exploring the mechanics behind them with you. Until next time, stay curious, question the anomalies, and maybe take a closer look at the people you pass in a hotel lobby. Take care.